Half for my vacation, half for my daughter's wedding dress, and you can just manage," sneered the mother-in-law, dividing my salary. But when she reached into my bag for the money, she shrieked in surprise. "And before we continue, please tell us which country you are watching this video from." Enjoy listening. Alina returned to work quickly after Mashenka was born. It wasn't that she was eager to get back, but the maternity leave money ran out fast, and living on Oleg's single salary became impossible. Fortunately, her accounting skills allowed her to work remotely, and her superiors were accommodating, recognizing her as a valuable employee. So, with the help of grandmothers who took turns looking after their granddaughter, Alina plunged back into the world of numbers and reports. Her salary, of course, it was less than before maternity leave, but it was still a significant boost to the family budget. Except Alina hardly got to decide how that money was spent. Her mother-in-law, Svetlana Arkadyevna, took matters into her own hands with her usual keen oversight. "I know better how to spend money. I have more experience," she declared imperiously when Alina received her first paycheck. Oleg, as always, remained silent, merely glancing guiltily at his wife. He feared his mother's hysterics more than a toothache. Alina also chose not to argue. Her mother-in-law was already helping with the child, and she didn't want unnecessary quarrels. She hoped that over time, Svetlana Arkadyevna would calm down and grant her more freedom in financial matters. Every month, upon receiving her salary, Alina dutifully handed the money over to her mother-in-law. This Svetlana Arkadyevna meticulously recorded all income and allocated funds as she saw fit. Some went towards utility bills, some for groceries, and some for Mashenka's clothes. But the largest portion, as a rule, was spent on the needs of Marina, Svetlana Arkadyevna's younger daughter. Marina was spoiled and accustomed to attention. She always got what she wanted and considered it her due. Alina tried not to dwell on the injustice, but resentment festered within her. She wanted to decide for herself how to spend her own money, earned through sweat and sleepless nights. "It's still the family budget after all," Svetlana Arkadyevna would often repeat. "We all live together, so our money is shared." Alina didn't argue, but her insides churned. She felt less like the mistress of her own home and more like a servant, not obligated to account for every penny. She longed to buy herself a new dress, go to the hairdresser, simply feel like a woman, not just a mother and an accountant. But for all that, in Svetlana Arkadyevna's opinion, there was no money. Oleg saw that his wife was unhappy but preferred not to interfere. He feared his mother's wrath, feared disrupting the familiar routine of their lives. He was a good man, but too weak-willed and dependent on his mother's opinion. Alina loved him, but sometimes it seemed to her that he had never truly grown up. In the evenings after putting Mashenka to bed, Alina often sat in the kitchen, drinking tea and trying to quell her irritation. She wanted to express everything that was pent up, but she was afraid. Afraid of ruining her relationship with her husband, afraid of offending her mother-in-law, was afraid of disturbing the fragile peace in the family. She remained silent, hoping that everything would somehow resolve itself. One day, when Alina received her latest paycheck, Svetlana Arkadyevna, counting the money, remarked, "Oh, why is it so little? Didn't you get a bonus?" "No," Alina replied softly. "There was no bonus this month." "Oh, well," Svetlana Arkadyevna said cheerfully. "But next month, I hope there will be. We really need money right now." "For what?" Alina asked timidly. "For what? Marina needs a new dress. Her birthday is coming up, and I've been offered a voucher for a spa. It would be a sin to refuse. Health must be preserved." Alina silently watched her mother-in-law, feeling a wave of indignation rise within her. So, there was money for Marina's dress and for Svetlana Arkadyevna's spa voucher, but not for a new dress for her. Her needs always seemed to fall short. "And for me?" Alina asked quietly. "What about you?" Svetlana Arkadyevna asked, surprised. "I don't need anything?" "Oh, what are you imagining? You have everything. A husband, a child, a job. What more could you possibly need?" Alina remained silent. She wanted to scream, to cry, to pour out everything that had accumulated over these months, but she restrained herself. She understood that now was not the time. for hysterics. She needed to act calmly and thoughtfully. She composed herself and said politely, "All right, Svetlana Arkadyevna, as you say." That night, Alina couldn't sleep for a long time. She lay in bed next to Oleg, staring at the ceiling, contemplating her next steps. She was scared, but she understood that things couldn't go on like this. She had to protect herself, her family, her independence. She knew it wouldn't be easy. Svetlana Arkadyevna wouldn't give up without a fight, but Alina was ready for the struggle. She was no longer afraid. She was no longer the quiet and obedient daughter-in-law. She was transforming into a warrior, ready to fight for her happiness. Alina knew that Oleg was unlikely to support her. He was too weak and dependent on his mother, but she hoped that in time he would understand that she was doing the right thing. She hoped he would see how tired she was of constant control and humiliation. Alina decided to act independently. She would no longer wait for someone else to solve her problems. She would take her life into her own hands. And the first step on this path would be a small but very important act of defiance. Alina resolutely turned onto her side and closed her eyes. Tomorrow, she would begin her quiet revolution. Alina received her salary. The sum, frankly, was not impressive. After taxes and other deductions, very little remained. But it was her money, earned through sweat and sleepless nights while little Masha slept. Theoretically and practice, it still slipped through her fingers like sand, settling into Svetlana Arkadyevna's bottomless pockets. She entered the apartment, trying not to show either joy or sadness. Oleg sat in his armchair, engrossed in his phone. Marina, as always, was painting her nails, exuding the acrid smell of nail polish. Svetlana Arkadyevna bustled in the kitchen, clanging pots as if she were not cooking dinner, but signaling the start of military operations. "Here comes our little worker," Svetlana Arkadyevna announced loudly, without even turning around. "Got the money? Excellent. Just in time." Alina nodded silently. She felt the tension building inside her, her fists clenching. Today would be different. "Well," she declared, as if reading a royal decree, "half will go towards my vacation. I'm so tired, I need a break, or I'll collapse from high blood pressure soon. And the other half, of course, will be for Marinoshka's new dress. She has a date soon. She needs to look her best." Oleg smiled weakly and muttered something about his mommy. Marina, batting her eyelashes, ran to Svetlana Arkadyevna and kissed her on the cheek. "Thank you, Mommy. You're the best." Alina watched this performance and felt a wave of fury rise within her. Fury mixed with despair. Her opinion, as always, interested no one. She was simply presented with a fait accompli, a given. She was the source of income, a disenfranchised cash cow whose efforts could be disposed of at will. She took a deep breath and tried to remain calm. "All right," Alina said in an even voice. "As you say." Svetlana Arkadyevna smirked smugly. "That's my good girl. I was starting to worry." Alina didn't let her finish. "Only, may I see the dress first? I'd like to make sure Marina will really like it, and also find out where exactly you plan to go on vacation. Maybe I can help you find a good hotel." Svetlana Arkadyevna was slightly taken aback by this sudden interest. Usually, Alina simply agreed silently to everything she was told. "Well, of course you can," she mumbled. "Come to my room this evening. We'll look together." Alina nodded and left the room. She felt the gazes of Oleg and Marina on her, but she didn't turn around. She needed to be alone to gather her thoughts and complete her plan. That evening, when Svetlana Arkadyevna went to take a shower, Alina returned to her room. Alina, trying not to betray her nervousness, transferred the actual money into an old button box that she had kept since school. The box was on the very top shelf of the wardrobe in the bedroom, behind some old winter clothes. It seemed like the safest place in their small apartment. Then she took a small but perfectly functional mousetrap from the kitchen cupboard. Oleg had brought it home once, intending to deal with a mouse that had appeared out of nowhere, but it never showed up. Now the mousetrap was to play a completely different role. Alina carefully set the spring and placed the mousetrap in her bag, now covering it from the bottom with an old wallet. Next to it, she placed a prepared note written in large block letters on a scrap of paper. Not yours. Don't take. She knew it looked foolish and childish, but she saw no other way to get through to Svetlana Arkadyevna. It was her desperate cry for help, cast in a grotesque form. The entire next day, Alina walked on pins and needles, listening to every rustle. She felt as if Svetlana Arkadyevna was looking at her with suspicion, but she behaved as usual. She commanded in the kitchen, gave Oleg instructions, and cooed endlessly at her granddaughter. Marina, as always, was occupied with herself and her social media, paying no attention to anything. Towards evening, when Oleg went to the store for groceries and Marina went out with a friend, Svetlana Arkadyevna, as usual, started her domestic chores in the kitchen. Alina, meanwhile, sat in her room at the laptop, pretending to work. In reality, she nervously tapped her fingers on the keyboard, unable to concentrate on the numbers. Suddenly, a sharp, piercing scream echoed. Alina jumped up. Her heart pounded wildly. She ran into the kitchen and froze in the doorway. Svetlana Arkadyevna stood in the middle of the kitchen, holding her hand and looking at Alina's bag lying on the table with an expression of horror and rage. There was a small drop of blood on her finger. "What happened here?" Alina asked loudly, trying to inject as much calmness and innocence into her voice as possible. "What is this?" Svetlana Arkadyevna hissed, pointing a trembling hand at the bag. "What do you think you're doing?" Alina slowly approached the table and looked into the bag. The mousetrap still lay at the bottom, set, but now a small drop of blood was visible on its metal bar. Nearby lay a scrap of paper with the note. At that moment, Oleg entered the apartment. He carried grocery bags and looked puzzled. "What's going on here? I heard a scream. Mom, what's wrong?" Svetlana Arkadyevna looked at her son with hurt and indignation. "Your wife set a trap for me. Look what she did." Oleg put the bags down and walked over to the table. He picked up the note and read it aloud. "Not yours. Don't take." "What does that mean?" Alina was silent, her head bowed. She felt herself blushing, but couldn't find words. It all looked so foolish and absurd. It was me," she finally stammered. I put the mousetrap in the bag." "Why?" Oleg exclaimed, looking at her with bewilderment. "Why did you do that?" Because I'm tired," Alina blurted out, unable to hold back. "Tired of the constant control, of my money being considered someone else's, of no one listening to me." Svetlana Arkadyevna snorted disdainfully. "What nonsense are you talking? I was just trying to help. Did I ever wish you harm?" "Help?" Alina chuckled bitterly. "Taking my money for your entertainment is help. Deciding what I can buy and what I can't, that's help. I'm not a child. I'm an adult woman, and I want to manage my own money." Oleg shifted his gaze from his mother to his wife, clearly unsure what to say. He had always avoided conflict, especially with his mother. But now, looking at Alina's tear-streaked face and Svetlana Arkadyevna's flushed face from anger, he suddenly felt that he had to do something. "Mom," he said quietly, maybe Alina is right. Maybe we should really decide for ourselves how to spend our money." Svetlana Arkadyevna raised her eyebrows as if she couldn't believe her ears. "What are you saying, Oleg? You know I've always wished you nothing but good. I just wanted everything to be good for you." "I know, Mom," Oleg sighed. "But we're adults now. We can take care of ourselves." An awkward silence filled the room. Svetlana Arkadyevna looked at Oleg with disappointment and hurt. Alina raised her head and looked at her husband with gratitude. For the first time in a long time, she felt that he was on her side. "Fine," Svetlana Arkadyevna finally said, barely containing her anger. "Do as you please, but don't say later that I didn't warn you." She turned and left the kitchen, slamming the door loudly. Oleg walked over to Alina and hugged her. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "I know I was wrong. I should have supported you sooner." Alina pressed against him, feeling tears well up again. "Thank you," she whispered back. "Thank you for being with me." At that moment, she realized that the mousetrap had worked not only on Svetlana Arkadyevna, but also on Oleg. It had helped him see the situation from the outside and realize how much his mother controlled their lives. An awkward silence filled the kitchen. For the first time in a long time, it wasn't Alina who was losing face in the house. Svetlana Arkadyevna, accustomed to unquestioning obedience, was disarmed. Oleg, observing his mother, began to realize how far his family's dependence on her opinion and control had gone. He saw not only a domineering woman but also a vulnerable mother afraid of losing her power. Alina pulled away from Oleg. She felt drained, but at the same time liberated. She understood that this was just the beginning, that there would be much more struggle ahead, but now she knew she wasn't alone. She had Oleg, who was ready to support her. She picked up the grocery bags from the floor and started unpacking them. Oleg silently helped her, trying not to meet her eyes. He felt guilty and confused. He understood that he had to change something, but didn't know where to start. Alina could no longer live like this. For too long, she had allowed Svetlana Arkadyevna to rule their family. For too long, she had endured humiliation and injustice. The mousetrap had been the last straw, a symbol of her desperate yearning for freedom. The next morning, Alina, gathering her courage, went to the bank. She opened her own account, to which her salary would now be deposited. For the first time in a long time, she felt like the mistress of her own life, not a puppet in her mother-in-law's hands. In the evening, when Oleg returned from work, Alina was waiting for him in the kitchen. She could see from his face that he was still troubled by yesterday's incident. "Oleg, we need to talk," she said, trying to speak calmly but firmly. Oleg sighed and sat down on a chair. He tried not to look Alina in the eyes, as if afraid of seeing condemnation there. "Mom is very upset," he mumbled, as if apologizing. "I know," Alina replied, "but I can't go on like this anymore. I don't want my salary to go towards your mother's whims and Marina's dress. It's my money. I earned it, and I want to decide how to spend it." Oleg remained silent, shifting his weight from foot to foot. Alina saw how difficult it was for him. He was torn between the desire to please his mother and support his wife. "I understand that it's hard for you," Alina continued, softening her tone. "But you have to understand me too. I'm tired of feeling like a servant in my own home. I want us to have a normal family where decisions are made jointly, not at your mother's command." Oleg raised his head and looked Alina in the eyes. His gaze held confusion, but also a new, unfamiliar feeling for Alina, determination. I'll talk to her," he finally said. "I'll tell her not to interfere in our affairs anymore." Alina looked at her husband incredulously. Was he really ready to go against his mother? Had he finally grown up and realized that he had his own family to protect? "Are you sure?" she asked. "Yes," Oleg replied firmly. "I love you, Alina, and I don't want you to suffer." This conversation became a turning point in their relationship. Oleg, embarrassed by what had happened, did indeed talk to his mother. The conversation was difficult, full of reproaches and hurt. Svetlana Arkadyevna shouted, cried, accused Alina of all mortal sins, but Oleg stood his ground. He explained to his mother that he and Alina were an independent family, and they should decide for themselves how to live and how to spend their money. Svetlana Arkadyevna, of course, did not immediately accept defeat. She demonstratively sulked, ignored Alina, complained about her health and loneliness, but gradually, seeing that her methods were not working, she began to retreat. Alina, meanwhile, did not sit idly by. She decided to return to work in the office. Remote work was convenient, of course, but she felt detached from the world, confined within four walls. She needed interaction, new experiences, an opportunity to prove herself. The job search took several weeks, but in the end, Alina was lucky. She was hired as an accountant in a small but promising company. She was happy. The new job gave her not only financial independence but also self-confidence. She felt needed, in demand, interesting. Her first day at work was nerve-wracking. Alina worried whether she could handle the new responsibilities, how she would be accepted by her colleagues, but everything went well. Her colleagues turned out to be friendly and welcoming. The work was interesting and engaging. With each passing day, Alina became more confident and independent. She no longer feared her mother-in-law, did not feel obligated to her. She learned to set boundaries and defend her interests. Her relationship with Oleg also improved. He became more attentive and caring, began to listen to her opinion, and helped around the house. He saw how Alina blossomed, how happy and self-confident she became, and he understood that it was his achievement. He had been able to support her in a difficult time, to protect her from maternal despotism. Svetlana Arkadyevna, seeing that her influence was weakening, gradually resigned herself to the new state of affairs. She stopped interfering in Alina and Oleg's finances, stopped giving unsolicited advice, and criticizing their decisions. She even began to show signs of respect for Alina, acknowledging her right to her own opinion and independence. Life in the family settled down. Alina and Oleg began to live by their own rules. Without looking back at the opinions of the older generation, they learned to compromise, respect each other, and support each other in difficult times. They became a true family built on love, trust, and mutual understanding. One evening, as Alina and Oleg sat in the kitchen drinking tea, Alina suddenly said, "You know, Oleg, I think we should be grateful to your mother." Oleg looked at his wife in surprise. "Grateful? For what?" "For helping us become stronger. If it weren't for her control and despotism, we would never have learned to defend our interests, set boundaries, and value our independence. She made us a real family." Oleg pondered Alina's words. Perhaps she was right. Perhaps everything that had happened was not an accident, but a necessity. Perhaps they really needed to go through all these difficulties to become who they are now. He hugged Alina and said, "I love you." "And I love you," Alina replied, pressing against her husband. They sat like that, embracing, and looked out the window. It grew dark outside. Stars lit up in the sky. Peace and quiet reigned in their home. They were happy. They had managed to break free from the matriarch's control and build their own happy life. And they knew that nothing could stop them now.